Okay, welcome to another episode of Escape the Rat Race Radio. I hope you've all been well whilst I have been away for the last couple of weeks. So if you've missed me, I've been away in Thailand attending a private silent meditation retreat up in the hills in Koh Phangan with a 72-year-old wise old monk teaching us the Buddhist ways, and it was an amazing experience. But I'm back, I'm refreshed, and I am so looking forward to today's interview because I have a very special escapee today, which is Imogen Cook. How are you, Imogen?
Hi, Chris. I'm really good. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, Imogen, it's really, really good to hook up with you. I've been trying to pin you down for absolutely months, but you have been roaming all over the world, which we're about to hear all about. So why don't we kick off with part one, which is where you were. So Imogen, before we get stuck into all the exciting stuff that you've been doing, why don't you let people know where you used to work and what you used to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a corporate drone, very much so, working in London in financial services. I was a relationship manager working with a lot of hedge fund clients. And I don't know how many people listening in have worked with hedge fund people before, but they are pretty aggressive and demanding and exhausting and stressful and all of those things that lead to burnout. So I wasn't really loving that. It was definitely a traditional good job in the sense of things. But basically in March 2018, so it's been a little bit over a year now, I decided to make a lot of changes. I went into business full time, running my business fully online. And then because that wasn't challenging enough, I also decided to travel around the world, moving country every month for the last 12 months. So I've just wrap that up and currently in Mexico City. Okay,
good stuff. Well, before we sort of jump ahead, let me sort of frame things, because we knew each other. We first met actually, I don't know when it was, maybe around 2015, and we were both looking at property, weren't we, at the time? We were both involved in different ways. And at what point did you really make that decision that you knew that the corporate life wasn't for you anymore? Was there a turning point? Was there a certain occurrence that happened where you said, okay, I need to run my own business, I need to be my own boss?
So I've been in business, as you say. I'm still in the property world. I'm still property investing in the UK, and I work a lot with that community as well as other entrepreneurs too. And I was doing that outside my job, and then I started yet another business, which is the one that I'm doing online. So I was stretched pretty thin. But the turning point was really the 2017. I had an absolutely diabolical year. I had so many horrible bad things happen to me. And it was a variety. It was personal life. It was professional life. I broke my leg. So many nasty things happened within a short period of time. And so there's a saying about this, isn't it? You need to get really uncomfortable. Like, it's when you're comfortable that you don't really make the leap and go for it. And things just, I was so stressed out. And at the end of the year, I sat down and I said to myself, I'm very passionate about business. I want to change. And I will not let this year happen to me again. I was like, whatever else happens to me, 2017 is not going to happen again. So because of that, I just decided that it was a real kind of screw it moment, if I can say that. And I signed up for this program where I went off traveling. And just went for it. The business was going well. It was growing. The good thing about breaking my leg is that I got signed off at work for 2 months, and I spent that whole 2 months on the phone building my business from home.
Nice.
I just went for it, and haven't really looked back. It's not been easy necessarily, but it's definitely been worth it and rewarding.
Okay. Well, we're going to move into obviously what that remote business looks like and what that involves on a day-to-day basis. But was there a date that you can remember, which was your Escape the Rat Race date, that final day at work where you just went, see ya?
Yeah, I promised myself when I sat down at the end of 2017 and thought about it, I said, I am going to be out by my birthday, which is in March. So my birthday is on the 21st of March. And that's when I said to myself, I am going to be done with this on the 21st of March. And I actually missed it by a few days. I think it was the 30th of March when I actually quit and went. But as that date approached, I got really uncomfortable. I started to think about it more and more. And I was like, yeah, I'm serious about it. I don't want another year to pass, not be doing, these things that I'm really passionate about. So setting a date is an extremely valuable thing to do, especially if you set a meaningful date like I did.
Yeah.
So.
Well, congratulations on that. So that was where you were. So if we swiftly move into part 2, which is the exciting part, which is really where you are now and what you've been doing since then. So tell us a bit more about what the remote business is that you set up, and of course the exciting year that you've just had.
Yeah, so the business that I set up was to help entrepreneurs work with virtual assistants. The virtual assistants that I find for entrepreneurs to work with are Philippines based. So that's the market that I'm working with. The entrepreneur customers that I work with, I was working with a lot of people in the UK, but as I've been traveling, my business has also kind of gone international as well. I work with a lot of people in the USA and Canada. We've got into Australia now. So yeah, it's been absolutely brilliant. Switzerland and Germany, which I wasn't really expecting, but they do a lot of business in English and they have the same problems as the rest of us. There are not enough hours in the day and they need help and they want to accelerate forward. So that's the business that I've been working online as I've been traveling around.
Yeah, and it's been 2 years now that I've had the pleasure, I should say, of working with my wonderful virtual assistant Ella. And Ella, you kindly sourced for me, and I know at that time you were just getting inquiries left, right, and centre, weren't you? I mean, did you realise when you set that business up just kind of how much in demand you were going to be?
Absolutely not. It wasn't supposed to be a business. It was an accidental business, actually. So within my property business that I was running, I had this problem that I needed to solve for myself, which was I was working full time. I didn't have enough hours. There were a lot of tasks to do. They weren't necessarily that complicated tasks, but they were time consuming. So I worked out how to find great people from the Philippines, not just average ones, but really, really great ones. I worked out a way to do that. I worked out how to onboard them into my business. I worked out how to delegate to them, how to communicate with them, how to work closely with them. And then I set that up and I didn't really think about it until I was networking quite a lot and I was speaking to yourself, other people, and people started asking me questions. Their ears would kind of prick up. They'd be like, oh, you're working with virtual assistants. And then they just asked me questions and questions and questions, and I would talk to them. And then the same thing kept coming up, and I was a bit blindsided by it. What I thought a little naively would happen is people would take the information that I'd given them and be like, okay, I can do this too. Like Imogen's worked this out, and they take it and apply it to their own business. But just setting up those systems is actually quite a lot of work. So what actually happened was people were like, oh, I love your system, so can you do this for me? And that just happened over and over and over again. And it's still happening now all the time. I haven't really had to go out and chase customers. They've all kind of flowed back to me, generally from talking to someone else who's worked with me. So that's really lovely. It's a really nice way to do sales. It's really rewarding and it's really friendly. And when you speak to somebody who has spoken to someone else that they like and respect, who has told them that you are good, they come in with a really lovely attitude about like, so I hear you're quite good, can I talk to you a bit more? And it just basically sells itself, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and I've recommended several people to speak to you, and I know they've all been super happy with the service that you provided, and they're still working very happily with their virtual assistants. So yeah, you really did kind of come across something that you were naturally very good at. And we talk about wealth dynamics a lot on Escape the Rat Race Radio, and I know you've taken wealth dynamics test, and knowing what you're good at and just really focusing on that is definitely a good tip, isn't it, for people looking to get out of their 9-to-5 jobs?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been interesting that and you can feel what you're good at. There's a natural flow to it. So I like designing systems. I like talking to people, and I love creating things. I'm kind of a combination of the different types of creative people according to wealth dynamics. And that works extremely well with what I'm doing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, as well as starting this wonderful new business, you then thought, hey ho, let's just go and travel the world as well at the same time. So tell us about what you've been up to over the last 12 months, Imogen.
Yes, that has been quite the journey, obviously literally, geographically, but also emotionally and through my business and professional growth. It's just been completely insane. So what I did was I signed up for a program where groups of digital nomads travel together. So I was traveling around the world with 40 other people, which is pretty hectic. And our route took us from South Africa. We started in Cape Town in April of 2018. We went through Europe, Lisbon, Valencia, and Sofia in Bulgaria. We went to Asia for 4 months, which was Hanoi in Vietnam, Chiang Mai in Thailand, Kyoto, Japan, and KL in Malaysia. And then we did the final 4 months in Latin America, going through Lima. We spent 2 months in Colombia, actually. We did both Medellin and Bogota, and then Mexico City. So I've wrapped that up last week. I'm still in Mexico City. The first thing that I want to do is slow down because that travel pace was completely insane. It is a fantastic experience, of course, but you've got to bear in mind that if you're in that phase of business building, that's a very intense phase where you need to make a lot of sacrifices. It doesn't really matter where you are in the world. So I don't know if anyone has this vision that I've been like lying on the beach with a laptop, but that doesn't happen. I don't know if anyone's actually tried that, but first of all, you can't see your screen, so it's not practical. The sand breaks your computer, and I'm too white to stay in the sun for very long anyway, so the whole thing would just not be particularly well suited. So I've had to work very hard as well, but the learning curve has just been absolutely incredible. It's one of those rare times in my life where I've just had so much that I've learned about myself, about being a digital nomad, with that lifestyle, about being an entrepreneur and trying to balance all the different things in your life, which is always a challenge, no matter wherever you are, if you want to do anything outside of business. And yeah, it's been incredible. So right now, I'm in Mexico City. It is a fantastic city. It is full of museums and art cinemas and different neighborhoods to explore and parks. And there's lots of little pueblos just outside. The food is fantastic. It is a great place to be. It reminds me a little bit of London in that there's so much going on here, except it's all in Spanish with lots of smiling people and dancing. So I'm happy here for the moment. I will continue with my travels, but I really want to make this kind of more of a consolidation and growth period for my business as well.
Well, you're certainly selling Mexico City to me. A warmer, smilier version of London. It sounds pretty cool. And the places that you've travelled, absolutely amazing. And this is why I was so looking forward to having you on the show, Imogen, because it's two areas which I think people are so interested in is online business. In fact, three areas, virtual assistants, which we know that everyone is so short of time. It's the number one challenge that people have that come to escape the rat race is, I just don't have enough time. I'm juggling so many things, and they're so interested in VAs. But there's challenges that come with that as well, of course. And I know you get asked this all the time. So maybe we could talk about some of these. What are some of the biggest challenges working with virtual assistants?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are, three big challenges that I like to talk about. The first big challenge, and I think it's what a lot of people are scared of, is just finding a great virtual assistant, because so many people in business are really pouring their heart and soul into it. They have a dream, they want to break the routine, they want to change their life. It's one of the reasons I love to work with my customers, because they're very passionate, and often it's linked to big life changes for them. So it's really important. So the last thing they want is somebody who's going to let them down, and people are really scared of that. And that's one of the reasons they find it difficult to let go of control. So finding a good, excellent virtual assistant is a big challenge. Anywhere in recruiting anyone who's really good is a big challenge. I think that's kind of recognized. The second thing that I think people are finding very challenging is just understanding a bit more about delegation. What do they delegate? What do they delegate first? How do they delegate effectively? All of these things are very overwhelming for an entrepreneur. Even if they get a great person, they're quite often drowning, which is why they got a VA in the first place. And now that on top of drowning, they have to work out how to manage and delegate to this person. So that can feel quite scary too. And then the third thing, which is rarely talked about, I do talk about this a lot, but it's not really talked about in the industry very much, is really building a really solid long-term relationship with that virtual assistant. Because if you bring a really talented, driven person into your business and you manage them wrong, they're going to leave you. So there is a responsibility on your side to make sure that you get that communication right, that you get that relationship right. And there's been a little bit of a stigma, I think, that virtual assistants are robots. So you just go, here, robot, here's your stuff to do, and off you go. And, they are people. They're not motivated by that. You need to sort of work in the right ways to talk to them and to motivate them. I am very, very pro systemization. If anyone thinks that I am talking about not being efficient, that's not what I'm talking about. I love efficiency systems, but I think that efficiency systems should run alongside great relationships with people. It should never be at the cost of a great relationship with a person. So you should never hire a VA and not speak to them and just send them stuff through project management systems and have no interaction. That's not really going to be the best way to get the best out of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you produce a lot of materials and videos online as well, and all these tips that really, really help and make a difference. And I think it's the reason, obviously why I've had a great relationship with Ella for the last 2 years, and so many of your other clients have as well, because of those real good principles that you put in place. Yeah. In terms of working remotely, we were chatting before the call a little bit, and you had some really good tips for people, because location freedom is always up there on people's list as well. A big reason why people want to escape the 9 to 5 and not have a boss is because they want to travel the world. But we've already talked about some of those challenges. I mean, do you have some tips for someone who is looking to maybe work remotely in terms of what are some of the things they should really think about, and especially with getting that income coming in, because that can be one of the hardest things, is starting a business, going traveling, but actually not having any money coming in?
Yeah, I would, as with everything I've ever done in business, I would now advise someone to do it completely differently to how I did it when I first started, because you learn so many lessons along the way. And with this, I did do this to an extent, but anyone who's really serious about location independence, maybe just look where you are. So if you're in a career, as I was, where I was fixed in, they wouldn't, they barely let me work from home. They certainly wouldn't let me work from abroad. That just wasn't really an option for me. So anyone who's in that situation, just look at what potentially you could do working online, because you don't have to leave the country to start to build up an online income. You can do that from your bedroom, after hours, at weekends, a couple of hours a day. You just need to look at what skills. A lot of people are teaching English. That's a possibility. A lot of people have got those freelance skills of video editing, web design. You don't necessarily need to be with clients in person. So if you can build up anything like that online, where you start to have an income, and just spend a few months building that up, you'll get to a point where you're making a certain amount of money every month. And then just look at those destinations around the world and think about where's cheap. Because if you go and live somewhere really cheap, and it needs to be other factors, you need to enjoy being there. So think about, do you want to be near a beach? Do you want to be in a big city? Do you want to be out somewhere quieter? What things appeal to you in terms of environment? Because it's important for you to be happy too. And then you just kind of match them together. So if you think, actually, I would love to go and live in Bali, it would be quite chilled out. Look at the cost of living in Bali. You can go on digital nomad forums and say, guys, is anyone living in Bali? How much does it cost? And you can get that information really, really quite quickly. And if you're like, right, if I can live in Bali for £700 a month, then I just need to make £700 a month online, and I've got my costs covered. Ideally, if the online work is part-time, which it may well be if you're building it up outside of a full-time job, you'll get to a point where you can switch. You'll know that financially you'll be able to cover your costs. You switch, you go to somewhere like, let's say Bali. I've been using that as an example. There are a lot of digital nomads in Bali, so there's potentially lots of entrepreneurial networking opportunities for you out there. You're not going to be alone in that sense. You could go over there, and then you could start building up that business as well, and you've got better lifestyle, you've got your costs covered, you've got an environment that you think will work for you. And it would just be a great starting place. Now, I say that a little bit from the perspective of someone who went in all guns blazing, travel around the world, 12 countries in 12 months, and build a business on the side. And I feel that that is a lot. I survived. I survived doing that. But seriously, just think about the middle steps, because I have a little tendency to bite off more than I can chew a lot of the time. So those middle steps of building up an income, finding the place, and then, you know, one day you might find you've spent some great time in Bali and you're making a bit more money now. And you're like, well, you can reinvest that, or you could maybe look to switch location, go somewhere a little bit more expensive, and just gradually step it up. And if you want to go into a full crazy program the way that I did, just make sure that you're making enough income to cover that, but ideally working fairly minimal hours, taking that kind of 4-hour work week approach as much as possible, so you have the time to really enjoy different environments if you want to start moving rapidly between them, because, you know, that's a huge factor in this whole thing as well.
Yeah, and I would add to that, I mean, that's really great advice. Just, you know, the emergence of all the co-working spaces as well, because it does help to actually have somewhere to go and work each day rather than trying to work from home and cafes, which can really take its toll. And when I was living in Lisbon in the summer of 2017, you know, I found that really useful to find a co-working space, because then you can really separate your work time from your personal time, can't you? Because you're in these places to enjoy them, as you said, to you know, go and see all the wonderful sights and the beaches if that's your kind of thing. But it's so easy when you're starting a business for everything to just merge together and for it to just be work all the time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's some great co-working spaces. They've got communities. There are going to be other people there who've got, you know, entrepreneurial roots on the ground. Potentially there'll be local people who are starting businesses there. There'll be other international people who are moving through. It's a whole other community that you could potentially access as well when you go into these co-working spaces.
Yeah, awesome. So before we move into part 3, which is where you want to get to, Imogen, is there anything else that I haven't asked you yet in terms of like biggest realizations you've had since transitioning from being an employee to becoming an entrepreneur?
It's a really good question. I think balance is so important. And if you, I mean, I love to travel. You know, everybody says they love to travel. Some people mean that they love to go on holiday, which of course is great too. But I do generally love to travel, to learn about new cultures, all of these kind of things. And that can feel like quite a big clash with getting your head down and working on your business, which is one of the reasons that I talked before about gradually stepping it in and trying to make sure that you stay in balance. Because if you don't stay in balance, you're in danger of burnout. And this is also why great systemization and virtual assistants are an important component of your business, to bring that in. Because if you are every single role in your business, I think people forget this, that they start a business because they want more freedom a lot of the time. And then they feel very stressed and overwhelmed and they wonder why. But when you start a company, you've just made yourself, you know, the finance department, the marketing department, the sales department, the administration department, and your own personal secretary. You are all these departments, let alone the tech and the specialist skills and all the rest of it, and strategy and decision making. And of course you're overwhelmed. How could you not be if you're really going for it? So that's why, you know, the virtual assistant components of things, learning to delegate effectively and just trying to keep yourself in balance so that you can really do it like it's a marathon, not a sprint, it is really important, and take that longer term view. I think people get very excited about, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I'm going to make so much money in a year and it's really glamorous, and it's not.
Yeah.
It's really not.
Just, I mean, that's very wise words. One question is really, at what point should someone look to outsource to a VA? Because I know when I first did this, before I met you, and I don't know, I suppose I was about a year into running Escape the Rat Race, and I took on a VA, and it was a bit of a shambles, to be honest. Like, I just didn't know what to give them, and it was a mess, and it didn't work for me, and it didn't work for them either. So at what point should someone look to outsource? Is it literally as quickly as possible, or would you say when they get to a certain level, there's a certain point where you know, okay, now's the time?
That's such a good question. I think that once you're sure about what business model you want to do, is quite a good time to start thinking about it seriously, because there's going to be a phase when you want to start a business that you're brainstorming ideas, you're running around, you're looking at different things, you're maybe not sure what you want to launch, you're getting different ideas and input. VAs can help you launch something. They can help you with the research and the legwork and all the things that you need to do when you want to launch. A VA can help with that, especially if you employ one part-time. However, if you are not sure what you want to launch, then that's a bad time to bring someone else into it, because it may not launch at all. They may not have a job in a couple of months. It's just not a great time. But if you're sure and you're set on it, you're committed, you're pulling the structure together, that can be a good time. And it's some material that I want to produce actually is giving people more ideas on how the framework of that might work, because some people would consider that too early perhaps. The other time that's great is when, of course, you've got a business up and running. There's a lot of things that you're doing, especially repeat tasks. When you're repeating tasks over and over again, as soon as you repeat a task, you've got some kind of internal system in your brain for how you do it, because you've done it more than once. And you need to sort of recognize that, have almost an alarm bell that goes off that goes, I did this yesterday. It's time to get a VA to come in and take this over, because I have a process for it. I'm repeating it. It's time for me to hand it off so that I can move forward, be the strategy, grow the business. So repeat task is a big one as well.
Yeah. And that could be social media, that could be bookkeeping, that could be like a recurring event that takes place, or webinars or anything like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of it's operational, the kind of operational tasks that you do over and over again. For a lot of online businesses, they might be related to marketing. For something like property investing, it might be related to deal find and tenant find, but also personal errands. I think that people forget with this whole thing that, again, they're the company founder. So if you spend a couple of hours a day putting your contacts in from your networking cards, or even if you spend a lot of time booking your own travel, just outsource that. The whole reason that senior influencers in businesses are given a personal assistant is because it's recognized that their time is really valuable, and they don't want them to get bogged down with the administration of maybe their emails, diary management, possibly personal errands. So again, VAs can come in. Just because they're virtual doesn't mean they can't have that PA or EA role to help you with those tasks too. And I speak to customers sometimes who are like, oh, can I do that? I feel guilty. And I'm like, well, how valuable is your time? VAs can find it quite fun sometimes to go off and do these personal tasks for you. I've had VAs send out birthday cards for me, book nail appointments, like that. They don't mind. It can be fun for the right person. And they're like, right, no problem. I get it. Your time is valuable. I'll take care of this. Yeah. And Kevin Whelan, who I know you know, Kevin, founder of Wealth Builders, someone that I work with very closely as well. He has a good little formula, which I think is worth sharing here, which is that we roughly, as an employee, work 2,000 hours a year. So if you take a couple of weeks for holiday and weekends, it's about 2,000 hours. So therefore, you can roughly calculate how much money you're on per hour. So if you're on, say, £50,000 a year, or if, let's say, as an entrepreneur, you want to earn £50,000 a year as your first goal, then you just divide it by 2,000, which would give you £25 per hour. So if you want 100 grand a year, you divide it by 2,000, it'd be £50 an hour. So I guess if you take that formula and then say, are these tasks that I'm doing now, could I get someone to do it for less than £25 an hour or less than £50 or whatever that figure is, then you should be finding someone to do it, right? Oh, absolutely. And if you're going to the Philippines, that's going to cost you a fraction of that. It's going to be, less than a fifth. It's just, it's a complete no-brainer.
Okay, awesome stuff. Okay, well, let's move into part 3, which is where you want to get to, Imogen. So did you set yourself any goals or targets when you decided to leave your job to start your own business, and have you reached them yet?
That's a good question. I think the first thing that I just wanted to do was to make sure that I could cover all my basic costs. So that was quite stressful, because when I started traveling, I wasn't quite there, which is why I had that message of cover your base costs first so that you don't need to stress about it. But my business has grown and grown and grown. I'm there now, especially as I'm kind of slowing down, staying in one place for a bit longer. It just works out a bit cheaper than traveling around quite so much. So that, yes, that is part of it. one of the goals that I am starting to move into, but I want to do a lot more online information products. So I'll continue finding people great virtual assistants, but I know from talking to people that they want more information on delegation, systemization. They want coaching on how to build strong relationships. They want coaching on how to scale from one virtual assistant to a team of virtual assistants. That kind of thing is very interesting to people. So I want to take the time to produce a lot more material online, so that I can scale the way that I coach, reach out to a larger audience, and provide more support for my customers. So that's a big goal of mine as well. I'm also very interested in the whole world of making money online. It completely fascinates me. I love this concept that you could build up something online which would give you the freedom to live anywhere in the world. That's a very exciting idea for a lot of people. But it's not just that. I find the making money online industry fascinating. I think there are some incredible coaches out there teaching people some really good stuff. And I think there are a lot of people that are not teaching people the right things in the right way. So something that I would like to develop in the future is actually more information on steering people towards how to make the right coaches, find the right people, find the right support communities, understand the different options that are available to them. Some of the people I've been traveling with have made comments to me about passive income that has made it really clear to me that they don't understand it at all. And I suppose it's something that's talked about a lot without very much understanding. And with my particular specialisms, I'd like to bring more information onto specifically how virtual assistants can help you start and make money online or passive income businesses as well.
Well, I'm sure our listeners are going to be very eager to find out more details about that. And of course, we will be working closely to make sure that all of that will be shared and everyone can get access to that info. So do you feel as if you've now got greater potential to really achieve your big life goals now that you've got more control over your time and you're not in your 9 to 5?
I think, yeah, it actually took me quite a long time to decompress from the corporate world. So you don't just leave and the next day think, well, not in my case, I didn't just leave and the next day be like, oh, well, that's over. I left and then the next day I thought, what if it doesn't work and what if I have to go back? Like it's so scary, and you know, a lot of businesses fail and people get scared. And so it took a few months of me running my business online and traveling before it really felt real, that I was like, actually, this is my real life now. It really didn't feel like that for a while. It was a strange transition. I've never done anything like this before. It was incredible. But yeah, now I very much feel that there is no way that I'm going back to the old life that I had, that I got very stressed out with. Even in a worst case scenario, I would find consulting work or other ways to build up online income, working part-time, as I advise that people do as a middle step. That would, you know, potentially be a little bit of a step backwards for me, but to go forwards and to keep that freedom. So I think when I realized that, I was like, there is no way but forward. I've got a big network. People know that I'm available for collaboration and things. They reach out to me, which is great. There are a lot of opportunities and there's more time to pursue some of those opportunities. So yeah, I think it's great. I've got a lot of work to do still. I'm looking forward to some of it. I think it's going to be really exciting. And I think you need to keep revisiting your end goals with this thing. I mean, I've heard this over the years so much in the entrepreneurial community, but it's true. It's like, what is your end goal with everything that you're doing? You know, not only why are you doing it, but and what excites you about it, but like, where do you want to get to? And I suppose for me, I always want to be innovating and sharing information which helps other entrepreneurs. I genuinely am very passionate about that. But I also want to extract myself from the business. You know, even I've started to do it, of course, because just working with virtual assistants, it happens naturally, but I want to take that to the next level, just extract myself from the business as much as possible. So it really does become a lot more of a passive income business that doesn't require me to be there. I have a lot of ideas on how to do that. And one of the things that I'm thinking about is just sharing that more with my audience, like step by step, how I intend to extract myself, because I think that people, they understand that they need to do it, but the practicalities of how you pull yourself out of this business, which is, you know, you're completely swamped in, to the point where it doesn't really matter if you turn up or not, the business will run on a particular day, like things will just be dealt with. And that might seem like it's an impossible target, but it isn't. It's just lots and lots and lots of small steps along the way. So yes, I'm a creator. I want to continue creating, innovating and sharing, but also improve my own lifestyle by pulling myself out of things that I've already set up so that they can run autonomously.
Yeah, and a great book for anyone listening who wants to learn more about that is The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, and he really talks about that, creating that vision from the beginning and then building the business to make sure that you are not the one stuck in the middle of everything every day. Okay, and final question, what's the one most important thing that you believe will help you over the next 12 months to continue your growth and success, Imogen?
I'm going to say consistency, actually. I think that again, for anyone who's familiar with wealth dynamics, the part of the scale that I'm on, the creative part, means that we are head in the clouds people. So one day we'll be incredibly productive, amazing machines of ideas and innovation, and then the next day it just doesn't work because that's the way that kind of the temperament is. But there are things that I know that work well. There are things that I was a little reluctant to do, but when I did them, the reaction to them was so overwhelmingly positive that I'm like, right, I need to do that again. And it's just identifying those things within my business, the whole sort of 80-20 rule, taking the most important things and being very consistent about delivering them. And one of the reasons I specifically say that was because I've been traveling for the last 12 months, and it is difficult to have consistent sleep routines, eating routines of anything when there are particular things that you want to see in this like new location, but that thing is only open on Wednesday morning. So you either don't go and see it because you've got a really strict routine, or you bend your routine around. And of course, people usually end up bending their routine around to make sure that they can go and see some of these things. So consistency can be a big challenge for anyone with lots of commitments, I'm sure. But consistency not only with the structure and the way you work, but with what you work on and with recognizing what is making an impact. Mm-hmm. So that consistency is the thing for me.
Yeah. You mentioned wealth dynamics there, and it is so important. I'll link to it again in the show notes here. And that's again one of the things with building your virtual assistant team is understanding what your core skills are and what skills you need. And I asked Ella to take the wealth dynamics test when I was interviewing, and she came out as a Lord, which is really attention to detail, is good at systems and things like that. And that was exactly my weak spot and what I needed in the business. And that's why it's worked out as such a great match. And when you understand this from the beginning, it can really make things work out so much better. Okay. All right. So final words from you, Imogen. For anyone listening right now, they're squashed up on a train, maybe like you used to be, on the way to work or stuck in a traffic jam, and they really want to do something different with their lives. Maybe they dream of traveling the world just like you have done, but perhaps they're still letting something hold them back. It's probably fear, but what would you like to say to those people right now?
Well, yes, I was very familiar with this. I think that the really funny thing about this is when you're in that situation and when you're squashed up on that train and you think, oh, I'm scared to go off and do this thing that I'm really passionate about, or I've been thinking about it won't stop bugging me. Just remember that probably the worst case scenario is that you'll go and you'll do it. It won't work out. And then you'll be back where you are now, because so basically you're already living your own worst case scenario. So if you're living your own worst case scenario, why not go and try something different? Because, when I left, I was so nervous about it. And I thought the worst thing that can happen is that I'll go off, I'll do something else, and then I'll come back to the corporate world because, it won't work out. But eventually I'd get another corporate position and I'd come back in. And I was like, yeah, so that just woke me up to the fact that, so what I'm talking about is that the worst case scenario is what I'm living right now. I'm living my own worst case scenario. Is that good enough? Is that, for me, I just thought this is ridiculous. I've got no excuse not to go and do it. Like, I'm already at the bottom of the barrel according to my own logic. So I might as well, what's so terrible about that?
Yeah. Absolutely. And, to add some of the wise words that I received from the monk whilst I was doing my silent retreat, he said, you can learn from the past, you can plan for the future, but now is the only time that we have. And so just do it, right? Okay,
That's
Imogen.
right.
I know everyone is going to be eager to find out more about virtual assistants. What's the best thing for them to do? Where can they go? Where do you hang out online? And I know that we're going to offer something a little bit special as well for anyone that is interested in maybe speaking to you about sourcing a virtual assistant. Do you want to give some details about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I've systemized is a link into my diary. So I'll ask you to post that, and then people can literally book in, chat to me. I'm sure that they've got other questions or maybe things they're worried about, not sure about, and I can answer those personally on the phone. And then in terms of where to find us, our website is www.thefreedomgeek.com. I must admit the majority of my business comes from word of mouth referrals. So a lot of people get referred into us because they work with us and they like with us. And I do talk to people one-on-one a lot. But you're welcome to go and check out the website and see what we've gone up there. And then what I've put together that people really like is a checklist around what to delegate to a virtual assistant, because what I found was I got asked two big questions about virtual assistants. The first was how to get a good one, and we've got a lot of experience in that. Again, I can talk to people a bit more about how that works. But the second one that people would sometimes ask me is, well, where do I start with the delegation? What do I delegate? Like, I just don't know where to start with that. So because that's a very, very big topic, what I did was I challenged myself to come up with 100 tasks you could delegate, because I thought, well, if I give these people 100 tasks and say, there you go, take this checklist, go off, have a big brainstorm, see what most applies to you, what's relevant to you in the way that you're working, then I don't think you can ask me about this again. And sure enough, the people that I spoke to and I gave that document to, they were very happy, went off, clarified a lot of things for them. And so that was the very fast way of me dealing with that. So we'll set up a way for people to get hold of that document so that they can really start getting their mindset in place for how they're going to work with this delegation process with a VA going forward.
Yeah, we'll get that up on the page on the Escape the Rat Race website for this episode, and I think I'm going to pass that on to Ella to have a look through, because I haven't seen that document yet, but it sounds really, really good. So that has been awesome. Thank you so much, Imogen. I've really learned a lot and enjoyed finding out, because we've not spoken. As I said, I've been trying to pin you down, but you've just been so frantically busy. But it's really, really good to hear that things are progressing so well, that you're systemizing the business. And I hope that, everything just continues to grow in the wonderful way that it deserves to over the next 12 months for you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me on your podcast. It's been great.
Thanks, Imogen.
Thank you. Cheers.